Today, we begin with a crowd pleaser. In the EU region, we have a few major guilds of repute. Ashenfell, of course, Saints, Uganda, Spice, and more. We agree on very little, but there's one group that basically none of us get along with. And I dare say, they might be the only group in the world capable of binding the warlords in the south together. That's right. Communists.
I'm destroying them on the Falcon, I'm destroying them all.
Guys, let's get on these incorporated.
Mission parameters: the complete destruction and annihilation of all Chinese communists from the desert.
The borders on the back. Front left.
Get away, they haven't gotten the shit from us.
I'm holding them down there.
Is non-negotiable.
Megan, boy, push out the next one.
Guy's gonna try and make back in.
Take it out.
Listen guys, so that they had now.
Okay, the follow, leave that red. Make sure you're fighting together.
I need one guy to this deck.
We will not fail. We will not falter. We will see democracy triumph.
Guys, I need phone number 12 and one phone.
I should add that little scuffle there was the day after the Saints raid on our base in the previous chapter. It was a nice little fight to help us get back on our feet, and most of the guild got decked out in iron armor and weapons from this fight because, allegedly, the Chinese guilds duped buggery, like, all the time, so, they were armed to the teeth. And because their ping was so high, they couldn't fight for dick. So it was a fun little dust-up where I learned, although you can't attack people in proximity to trade stations, you can push their walkers out, then kill them. It was bants. I usually don't like trashing enemies, but they didn't even fight over their downed walkers because we destroyed them too quickly. Then they got a fob down and left the door open, so we just waltzed in and destroyed the beds. I've seen people drag out fights with this level of material for hours, but this was over in like 10 minutes, and we were just standing on the husks of their walkers, laughing at them trickle out the trade station, butt naked. None of this is related to the rest of the video. Just a bit of crowd-pleasing comic relief. So yeah, following on from the previous chapter, after the Saints raid, we had an axe to grind. But before that could happen, some sensible diplomacy was in order. There was a large number of smaller guilds to the south of us that had been cozying up to Saints. Those smaller guilds, although they weren't a threat to our territory, they were like 100 stinging wasps. Not dangerous, just bloody annoying. So with significant enemies to our north in Saints and Uganda, the coalition swarm of Saints to the south, and Spice making their way up to the north not that long ago, this meant we were alone for the time being. Fun as the defense against Saints was, we couldn't do that every night, so we needed to buy ourselves some breather room until we could develop a new doctrine for belligerence. We made numerous non-aggression pacts and alliances with neighbouring guilds, including but not limited to Last Pagans, SDC, and even SHR of all people. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, after all. The Ashenfell officers actually moved really quickly on this matter and got our borders secured within a day and a night. As part of the lessons we'd learned from the raid, we opted to begin the practice of packing the base away at night and whenever the home server wasn't at least crowded. Which I know some will say is chicken shit, but I just say it's common sense. Until the developers resolve the server capping issues, I see no need to squander the hard work of PvEers in the name of some pseudo-macho stance of only fighting with honour. That is dumb. In fact, the server capping issues in the current build of the game, at time of recording at least, are still really dumb. If it's possible to win against better guilds by just flooding their server with your guild's players, it somewhat deprives us all of actual PvP. I have been told, though, the developers are aware of it and it should get resolved at some point. It's not a design choice, more of a pre-alpha limitation, so no biggie in the long run. But for now, we have to work with what we've got, and what we currently have is a meta of flooding servers and breaking everything in sight. That was the intention against us the day the Saints invaded, and we were lucky to get some guys in the server. And to be honest, if people are going to do it to us, well, we're going to do it right back. All's fair in love and war. So enough talk. Time for the Empire to strike back. Ashenfell like to refer to themselves as apes. They go by the maxim of apes strong together. I don't know if you've ever seen a documentary about chimps, but when you provoke chimps, they don't roll over like adorable wolfhounds. No, they don't. They rip your fucking face off.
Get on the front, ballistas on the floor.
Falco's almost hit. Where?
It's a train station.
Legit. Right leg of the Tusk.
Start hitting everything.
I would do like.
Tusk is D legs.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe someone dumped the loot on top.
Yeah, it's got sword.
No,
just gone half witch.
Okay, everybody orbit. Feed each
We
other.
have, okay, so... if we need, Mike, if we need to put extra bolts, just do it because we...
3, 2, 1.
Check on the roof, see if they despawn on the roof, actually. Stop burning into the space.
Yeah, enough of that. You get the picture though, right? Pretty much the whole war after they raided our server was a one-sided curb stomp. And having been on the losing side of a guild war on Life is Feudal, I am reminded of the old adage. The only thing worse than a battle lost is a battle won. Not in the war is hell way, obviously, but the overall outcome of the war probably wasn't good for anyone. When major guilds fight without prior agreement, you can only wage war with total victory in mind. And there were no agreements with Saints. And God knows they tried to wipe us. They also didn't ask for mercy. I'm not sorry for what we did, but I am sorry we had to do it. I take no pride in driving players away from the game. It's not good for anyone. Cruel though our slot cappings were, well, this is how you end a war, Chernov. There were 4 solid days where we raided their main base and took literally everything from fiber to modules. And I mean everything. And it was mind-boggling at the time, because if that's the case, why didn't they just pack up their base during peak times or unpack it when the server was crowded? They didn't seem to learn. They just let us slot cap their server every day and seemed surprised when it happened. They tried slot capping us back, but we just packed up our base whenever we went raiding, so they would just end up fucking around on an empty Ashenfell tile. Within a week and a half of us teaching Saints the meaning of Ashenfest destiny, the Saints were finished. It was my first experience of seeing how a war in Last Oasis is prosecuted to completion, in all of its aspects, defending your land, breaking into bases, destroying walkers, fighting off their allies, and of course, most importantly, fucking around waiting for proxy timers.
Can you guys still hear his music?
Oh, for fuck's sake!
Holy shit, that...
Arch! Line! Face left! Line! Advance!
I'm a peaceful animal. This is a beast, huh?
Line! Attack! Toasty!
I can't believe everyone listened to me there. I don't really like crapping on enemies, especially enemies that are down. Except for those Chinese earlier, but that was really funny. So just stick with me to the end here, because I have no choice but to crap on Saints as an entity. In that Garchi-based shitpost back there, thank you for the song choice, by the way, Scracky, you may have noticed there wasn't a huge amount of challenging fights, just a lot of us catching the Saints with their pants down, overwhelming them, and breaking all their stuff. Well, it turns out there's a reason behind that. It's not exactly clear when it happened or why, but it's implicit the constant Ashenfell raiding and looting had something to do with the Saint leadership effectively abandoning the guild. They just disappeared, went offline, or started playing other games, and left the lower echelons holding the bag. Yet the Saints got completely murdered, but they weren't getting murdered because of bad decisions. They were getting murdered because there were no decisions. That's why they never learned. That's why they never organised a proper defence. That's why they never mustered enough people to fill up their own servers. We were essentially fighting a swarm of ants without a queen. Now, I did some digging and got some ex and current Saints to talk to me. From the sound of it, there was more than a bit of drama behind the scenes. So Saints was divided up into groups of nationality. There was an English group, and some story emerged about them getting purged due to an insiding conspiracy, which apparently is bollocks. What happened was, due to a spy in their ranks, the leadership cracked down on permissions in the guild, severely restricting what players could access. The subsequent discontent caused an exodus of players from the guild, so I suspect that's where that rumour comes from, you know, same beginning, same end, different means. Yeah. Then there was the German group, of which the leader at some point decided during this strife to just steal all the tablets and other values from the rest of the guild and bolt. Then he quit the game. That's a bit shit. Also, as a side note, he tried to get all of the Germans in Ashenfell to join Saints at one point and threatened to destroy us if we didn't comply, so that clearly didn't work out. There was also a French group, but I don't know anything about them except the overall leader of Saints was French, and supposedly it was the largest part of the guild. There was an ex-member of the English group who told me that they were quite hostile towards him, and I don't know if that was guild-wide, but... Then the last group I know anything about was the Russian group. These fellows, I know from first-hand experience, had and impressive resolve, and we knew full well with what we'd witnessed over the last week and a half, they would fight to the last man, no matter how long it took. And when the time came, they were the last men standing. The impression I've got from a lot of the accounts I've got from people is these groups, they really didn't get along and they didn't trust each other, and there was just this looming internal division. It's an inference, I'll grant you, but I suspect Saints would have disintegrated, or at the very least splintered, without Ashenfell's help, but we certainly expedited it. We had this information corroborated by the remaining Saint survivors while Saints was still active, sort of. So that's the story of how Saints fell to pieces. Anyway, after all that song and dance, there was only a few Saint holdouts left, and when the time came to finally mop up, they were a shadow of the Lions that had invaded our server 2 weeks before. It was pretty sad, to be honest. We invaded their last remaining tile with a single stiletto and about 30 guys. They had a clay base built around their proxy, a few farming walkers, a stiletto, and a falco. That's it. Their last stronghold, if you could call it that. And we smashed it all into matchsticks without any trouble because they just didn't have the manpower. We caught up with their falco and obliterated it since it only had about 4 crew on it. We were mopping the last of them up when something genuinely remarkable happened.
Ребята,
Stop.
My friends, stop, my friends. Stop, my friends. Adema, tell him I'm the leader. Tell him I'm the leader. Tell him to...
So we stop rigging their stuff then?
Yeah.
In the shade of a D-leg falco, they say, Beric's heart grew 3 sizes that day, and he displayed something none of us thought him capable of. Mercy. Beric extended the olive branch to what was left of the Saints right there on the battlefield. We stopped fighting, and we talked. And I was right there when it happened.
Объясняем ситуацию, как бы, почему сюда Шенфел приехал вас добивать, чисто из-за клана, не вас персонально, потому что вы Saints.
Ну что вы тут пришли делать?
Please ask him why does he need to keep fighting for a clan that incited his tablets and stole stuff from...
Okay, I understand what you say to him.
Okay, so yeah, Killer, my point is, like, I was fighting Saints because it wasn't really personal. The problem is like the German leader especially was a big shit talker, right? Like he talked a lot of shit.
Really, sorry, he said... I know it's not personal. I know it. It's just a game. But
yes.
I'm in clan Saints. I can't to you say
Killer,
something. What's going to do?
No, but Killer, let me explain something. Like the problem is, you guys are still fighting for a clan that is quitting the game, right? There is no Saints anymore. Saints are gone, and even the German players, they stole from you. They stole from your clan.
Well, know you that, everything. You know everything about us.
I'm trying to understand why you're still fighting for a group that stole from you and is now leaving the game.
Okay, guys, I listen to you, what you're saying. Yet, okay. Okay, we go to discuss between us.
I don't want to sit here beating down on you guys every day because that's not my gameplay, you know. I want to kill the bigger clans. I want to have competitive gameplay. And like you guys, I respect that you put up a fight and you're still struggling. But like I said, I don't think you guys should keep fighting for a group that stole from you, that is now leaving the game. Like, I think you would have more fun if you work with us now as a settler, and you can, like, go fight bigger targets, you know, and have fun. Instead of, like, sitting here trying to defend the Saints' name, you know? There's no point anymore.
Yeah, yes, I agree with you. You don't need to say. Have a discussion about it, and you get answers from us.
Yeah.
But it's not today, but maybe, yes, maybe... Yeah, I don't know. I need just speak to my people, you know?
Just to talk with your guys, we can stop the fighting now if you want. Like, I'm taking the proxy on this map. If you respect that you won't, like, attack this proxy here, then we can have peace now. We won't fight each other on the map.
No, we go stop it. We do nothing.
Okay. Okay, fair. That's
okay,
fair.
I go to speak my people, okay?
Okay, thank you, yeah.
At the time of recording, what's left of the Russian wing of Saints are in talks to become settlers of Ashenfell. It's a strange turn of events. I hope it works out for them. I really do. They deserve better than what they got. The rank and file of Saints gave us some of the best PvP I've seen in any game in years, but they were abandoned by the people they pledged to follow. And it would be a shame if such similarly relentless individuals were turfed out of Last Oasis because of bad circumstances. I'm not a bleeding heart or anything, but I don't like kicking folks when they're down, mostly because descending on 5 to 10 people with 30 and burning their base just isn't that fun, unless I really dislike them. And I didn't dislike these guys. Far from my pity or animosity, they had my respect to have kept the fight up for so long. We fought for 9 hours. They fought for 9 days. You know, it's rare when stuff like this happens, though. Usually clan wars only end when one side quits the game, and that seldom happens with a bang. It usually happens with a whimper. It just so happens this time, it ends with a handshake. After all, when are apes strongest? Together.